Former President Trump has announced possible plans to hit John Deere with tariffs. On Monday, Trump told a group of farmers Deere could face major tariffs if the company outsources jobs to Mexico.
Trump is going to shut down John Deere for what they did. John Deere is under siege, not just by the government, but by the very people who built its legacy, farmers and workers. At the center of this storm stands Donald Trump, vowing to bring the company to its knees for what he calls a betrayal of American values. What pushed Trump to take such a drastic stand? How did John Deere's once unshakable reputation crumble so quickly? And most importantly, could this be the beginning of the end for one of America's most iconic brands? Trump versus John Deere. A brand as American as apple pie, John Deere, known for its iconic green tractors and its steadfast commitment to farmers, finds itself in the crosshairs of the most polarizing president in modern history, Donald Trump. A decision by John Deere to move part of its manufacturing operations to Mexico, a move that Trump declared a betrayal of American workers and his America First agenda. The battle lines were drawn. Trump wasn't going to let a move like this slide, especially not from a company so deeply tied to America's heartland. His response was swift and unyielding. He proposed massive tariffs on John Deere's imported machinery, a move that threatened to shake the company to its core. But it wasn't just a clash between a president and a corporation. It became a rallying cry for many Americans. Farmers who had relied on John Deere for generations found themselves caught in the middle, forced to reckon with higher costs and uncertainty about their equipment's future. Meanwhile, factory workers who had dedicated their lives to building John Deere products saw the specter of layoffs and plant closures looming over their heads. Yet behind this public showdown lies a deeper story of globalization, corporate strategy, and the fragile balance of loyalty and profitability. What led John Deere to make this controversial move? And how did the president's fiery rhetoric escalate into an all-out war? The farmer's dilemma. To understand the full scope of this conflict, you need to consider the perspective of the American farmer. For decades, John Deere has been more than just a machinery supplier. It has been a trusted partner in the success of countless farms. From the fields of Iowa to the rolling hills of Kentucky, John Deere's tractors and harvesters have been essential tools in the American agricultural landscape. But Trump's proposed tariffs on John Deere's imported machinery sent shockwaves through the farming community. Tariffs meant higher prices for the equipment farmers relied on, at a time when many were already grappling with rising costs for fuel, seeds, and fertilizer. For small family farms operating on razor-thin margins, these price hikes were not just inconvenient, they were potentially devastating. On the flip side, some farmers supported Trump's tough stance. They felt betrayed by John Deere's decision to outsource jobs to Mexico, arguing that the company should prioritize American workers and the American economy. If we lose our factories, we lose our future. One farmer from Indiana said, "It's not just about equipment, it's about what kind of country we want to be." But as farmers debated the merits of Trump's policies, the true reasons behind John Deere's controversial decision came into focus, revealing a complex web of global strategy and economic necessity. John Deere's strategic expansion. At first glance, John Deere's move to expand its manufacturing operations to Mexico might seem like a straightforward business decision. The company cited lower production costs, access to skilled labor, and proximity to emerging markets in Latin America as the primary drivers of the shift. Executives framed it as a way to remain competitive in an increasingly globalized economy where companies must adapt or risk being left behind. By establishing a presence in Mexico, John Deere aimed to streamline its supply chain and reduce overhead costs. Lower labor costs in Mexico meant that the company could manufacture equipment more affordably, passing some of those savings onto its customers. Additionally, having a base closer to Latin American markets allowed John Deere to expand its reach in a region where demand for agricultural machinery was growing rapidly. In a statement, one executive explained, "This move isn't about abandoning our American roots, it's about positioning John Deere for sustainable growth in a global market. By reducing costs and increasing efficiency, we can continue to invest in innovation and deliver value to our customers worldwide." But for many Americans, these arguments rang hollow. To them, it wasn't just about numbers on a balance sheet, it was about jobs, communities, and the principles that had made John Deere a household name. And as the backlash grew, it became clear that this wasn't just a business decision, it was a flashpoint in the broader debate over globalization and its impact on American industries. The workers speak out. For the factory workers whose lives revolved around John Deere's American plants, the news of the move to Mexico felt like a gut punch. Many had spent decades on the assembly lines, taking pride in the craftsmanship that went into every tractor and harvester. To them, John Deere wasn't just an employer, it was a legacy. "I've given this company 30 years of my life," said one worker in Illinois. "Now they're saying that my job is cheaper somewhere else. It's like they don't care about the people who built this brand." The looming threat of layoffs and plant closures created an atmosphere of anxiety and anger. Workers organized protests, wrote letters to company executives, and reached out to local politicians, pleading for support. Some even turned to Trump, hoping his America First rhetoric would translate into concrete action to protect their jobs. At the same time, John Deere faced criticism from labor unions and community leaders who argued that the company was prioritizing profits over people. John Deere has a responsibility to the workers and the communities that made it successful, one union leader said. "This move to Mexico is a betrayal of everything this company claims to stand for." But as the workers' voices grew louder, John Deere's leadership held firm, defending their decision and bracing for the fallout from Trump's escalating rhetoric. The tariff threat. When news of John Deere's manufacturing shift to Mexico broke, it didn't take long for Donald Trump to respond. True to his America First ethos, Trump made it clear that he wouldn't stand by while an iconic American company outsourced jobs. In his signature style, he took to social media to lambaste John Deere's decision, calling it a disgrace to the American worker and promising swift action. "John Deere thinks they can take our jobs, move to Mexico, and still sell their equipment to American farmers without consequences?" Trump tweeted, "Not on my watch. We're going to hit them where it hurts, with tariffs." The proposed tariffs were designed to penalize John Deere for manufacturing equipment outside the US and importing it back into the country. These tariffs, ranging from 20 to 30%, would significantly raise the cost of John Deere machinery sold domestically, putting additional pressure on the company to reverse its decision. But Trump's threats weren't just about punishing John Deere. They were part of a broader strategy to send a message to American corporations: prioritize American jobs or face the consequences. "If we let one company get away with this," Trump said during a rally, "it sets a dangerous precedent. We have to draw the line." While Trump's base applauded his tough stance, the ripple effects of the proposed tariffs sent shockwaves through the farming community and beyond. The ripple effects. The farming community was already on edge, dealing with rising costs and unpredictable weather patterns. The announcement of tariffs on John Deere equipment added another layer of uncertainty to an already precarious situation. Farmers who relied on John Deere machinery for their operations suddenly faced the prospect of paying significantly more for tractors, harvesters, and other essential equipment. For small-scale farmers, this wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a potential death knell. Many operated on tight margins, and the added expense of tariff-inflated machinery threatened to push them into insolvency. "We're not big corporations," said one farmer from Kansas. "We can't just absorb these costs and move on. Every dollar counts." The situation was particularly dire for farmers who had already placed orders for John Deere equipment. Many found themselves caught between rising prices and delayed deliveries as the company scrambled to adjust its operations in response to Trump's policies. Stories of halted harvests and equipment shortages began to emerge, painting a grim picture of the toll these tariffs were taking on rural America. Meanwhile, the uncertainty surrounding John Deere's future created chaos within the company's supply chain. Suppliers, distributors, and dealers faced disruptions, leading to delays and strained relationships. "It's not just about John Deere," said an industry analyst. "When a company this big faces challenges, the entire agricultural sector feels the impact." Amidst this growing turmoil, John Deere's leadership faced mounting pressure to respond, both to Trump's administration and to the farmers and workers caught in the crossfire. John Deere's corporate response. John Deere's executives were no strangers to navigating challenges, but the combination of tariffs, public criticism, and internal unrest presented an unprecedented crisis. Behind closed doors, the company's leadership convened emergency meetings to assess the situation and chart a path forward. Publicly, John Deere defended its decision to expand manufacturing to Mexico, emphasizing the long-term benefits for the company and its customers. "Our commitment to innovation and affordability remains unwavering," a spokesperson said. "These decisions are never easy, but they are necessary to ensure John Deere's continued success in a competitive global market." However, the internal narrative was far more complex, with stock prices fluctuating and public sentiment turning against the company. John Deere's leadership knew that swift and decisive action was essential. The first step was to reassure stakeholders, farmers, workers, and investors alike that the company was committed to addressing their concerns. To mitigate the impact of tariffs, John Deere explored options to adjust its pricing strategy, absorb some of the added costs, and accelerate the development of cost-effective machinery. Simultaneously, the company ramped up its lobbying efforts, engaging with lawmakers to advocate for policies that would support American manufacturers while allowing for global competitiveness. But as John Deere sought to stabilize its operations, a new challenge emerged: Trump's environmental regulations, which threatened to further complicate the company's path forward. Regulatory showdown. While tariffs dominated headlines, another significant hurdle loomed on the horizon: Trump's new environmental regulations. These policies, aimed at reducing emissions and promoting sustainability, required agricultural machinery manufacturers to implement costly modifications to their equipment. For John Deere, compliance with these regulations presented a logistical nightmare. The company's engineers were tasked with retrofitting existing machinery and designing new models that met the stringent standards. This process required significant investments in research and development, as well as extensive testing to ensure the machinery maintained its performance and reliability. The timeline for compliance was tight, leaving John Deere with little room for error. Production delays became inevitable, creating a backlog of orders that frustrated customers and strained relationships with distributors. For farmers already grappling with higher costs due to tariffs, the additional burden of delayed equipment delivery added fuel to the fire. The situation also placed John Deere at odds with Trump's administration, highlighting the contradictions within the president's policies. On one hand, Trump championed deregulation and support for American businesses. On the other, his environmental mandates imposed significant financial and operational challenges. With both tariffs and regulations creating a perfect storm of challenges, John Deere found itself at a critical juncture, forced to rethink its strategies and priorities to survive. The financial fallout. As the dust settled on Trump's announcement of tariffs and environmental regulations targeting John Deere, the economic ripples turned into full-blown financial tremors. Investors, once confident in the stability of John Deere's global operations, began to reassess their positions. The company's stock, a symbol of its long-standing reliability, experienced its steepest drop in years. Market analysts scrambled to adjust their forecasts. John Deere, a bellwether for the agricultural industry, was now seen as a high-risk investment. The uncertainty surrounding the company's future amplified as the combination of tariffs and compliance costs threatened to erode its profitability. For John Deere, the financial strain was immediate and severe. Compliance with the new regulations required significant capital outlay, diverting funds away from other critical areas like innovation and expansion. The retrofitting of machinery alone came with a price tag of hundreds of millions of dollars, not to mention the delays in production schedules and supply chain disruptions. Suppliers and distributors also felt the squeeze. Contracts were renegotiated, timelines extended, and relationships tested. John Deere isn't just one company, it's the heartbeat of an entire ecosystem, said an agricultural economist. When it struggles, the ripple effects are felt across farms, towns, and industries worldwide. But the financial turmoil wasn't just about balance sheets. It was a direct reflection of the political and regulatory landscape that had left one of America's most iconic companies reeling. The political divide, the backlash against John Deere's move to Mexico, and the subsequent response by the Trump administration ignited a fierce debate on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle weighed in, turning the issue into a political flashpoint. Supporters of Trump's policies argued that the tariffs and regulations were necessary to preserve American jobs and secure the country's manufacturing base. "We cannot allow corporations to prioritize profits over patriotism," one senator declared. "John Deere must be held accountable for its decisions, just like any other company." Critics, however, saw the policies as a heavy-handed approach that threatened to stifle innovation and economic growth. "This is a perfect example of government overreach," said an opposing congressman. "We're punishing a company that's trying to adapt to a globalized world while ignoring the bigger picture." Public opinion mirrored the division in Washington. On social media, debates raged between those who supported Trump's hardline stance and those who sympathized with John Deere's position. Farmers, factory workers, and everyday citizens voiced their frustrations, fears, and hopes for the future. Meanwhile, the international community watched closely. Trade partners expressed concerns about the implications of America's shifting policies on global markets. Some nations even hinted at retaliatory measures, further complicating an already volatile situation. As the political rhetoric intensified, John Deere found itself caught between a rock and a hard place, facing both external pressures and internal challenges, legal battles, and strategic pivoting. The escalating conflict soon found its way into the courtroom. John Deere filed multiple lawsuits challenging the legality of Trump's tariffs and regulations, arguing that the measures were punitive and lacked a clear economic rationale. These policies are not just harmful to our company, they are harmful to the entire agricultural sector, John Deere's legal team asserted. At the same time, internal tensions within John Deere reached a boiling point. Disagreements between executives, board members, and stakeholders over the company's response strategy led to public resignations and private confrontations. Allegations of mismanagement further tarnished the company's image, complicating its efforts to regain public trust. Recognizing the need for a comprehensive response, John Deere began to pivot its strategy. The company launched an ambitious innovation initiative, directing resources toward the development of environmentally compliant machinery that could meet regulatory demands without sacrificing performance. This included early prototypes of hybrid and electric tractors, designed to appeal to both farmers and regulators. In parallel, John Deere expanded its presence in emerging markets, seeking to offset domestic losses by tapping into new customer bases abroad. Strategic partnerships with technology firms and agricultural organizations further bolstered these efforts, enabling the company to stay ahead of the curve despite the challenges at home. But as John Deere scrambled to adapt, the broader economic and social impact of the conflict became impossible to ignore, revealing deeper issues within the agricultural sector. The human cost. Behind the headlines and corporate strategies lay the stories of individuals whose lives were upended by the conflict. For American factory workers, the combination of layoffs, plant closures, and uncertainty created an atmosphere of despair. Many workers, some of whom had spent decades on the assembly line, suddenly found themselves unemployed with few prospects for the future. Farmers too bore the brunt of the crisis. The rising cost of John Deere equipment, coupled with delays in production and delivery, forced many to make difficult choices. Some postponed equipment upgrades, opting to repair aging machinery instead. Others sought out alternative brands, breaking long-standing relationships with John Deere dealers. For small, family-run farms, the impact was particularly devastating. "We've been loyal to John Deere for generations," said one farmer from Nebraska, "but loyalty doesn't pay the bills. We have to do what's best for our farm." The emotional toll of the conflict was equally significant. Stories of workers and farmers grappling with stress, anxiety, and financial hardship painted a stark picture of the human cost of corporate and political decisions. Community leaders and advocacy groups stepped in to provide support, but their resources were limited. As the economic and social fallout continued to unfold, one question remained. Could John Deere and its stakeholders find a way to recover and rebuild, or was this the beginning of a long-term decline? Innovation as the catalyst for survival. Faced with unprecedented challenges, John Deere leaned into its reputation as an innovator. The company recognized that survival would require not just compliance with regulations, but a reimagining of its product line to meet the demands of a changing world. The first step was a bold investment in research and development. John Deere allocated hundreds of millions of dollars to its engineering teams, tasking them with designing the next generation of agricultural machinery. These new models needed to balance environmental compliance with the rugged reliability that farmers had come to expect from the brand. One of the most ambitious projects was the development of hybrid and fully electric tractors. These machines, equipped with advanced battery technology and efficient powertrains, aimed to reduce emissions without sacrificing performance. While initial prototypes faced skepticism from traditionalists, younger farmers and environmentally conscious buyers embraced the concept as a glimpse into the future of farming. In addition to cleaner energy solutions, John Deere incorporated precision agriculture technology into its new machinery. Utilizing GPS, artificial intelligence, and IoT-enabled sensors, these systems allowed farmers to monitor and optimize their fields in real time. By automating tasks like planting, fertilizing, and harvesting, these tools promised to boost yields and reduce waste. John Deere also explored autonomous farming solutions, introducing robotic tractors and harvesters capable of operating with minimal human intervention. While still in the early stages, these innovations demonstrated the company's commitment to staying ahead of industry trends and providing farmers with tools to thrive in an increasingly competitive market. As John Deere doubled down on innovation, the question remained, could the company's technological advancements offset the damage done to its reputation and relationships with key stakeholders? Rebuilding trust. While innovation addressed the company's long-term survival, the immediate challenge was restoring trust with its core customer base and workforce. The backlash from farmers and factory workers had created a significant rift, one that John Deere needed to mend to ensure its recovery. To address farmers' concerns, the company launched a comprehensive outreach program. This initiative included town hall meetings, where executives and engineers met directly with farmers to explain the company's plans and gather feedback. These sessions were designed to rebuild the sense of partnership that had been a hallmark of John Deere's relationship with the agricultural community. John Deere also implemented financial assistance programs to help farmers cope with the increased costs of equipment. Flexible payment plans, trade-in incentives, and discounted pricing for loyal customers were introduced to ease the financial burden and demonstrate the company's commitment to its customers' success. For factory workers, John Deere prioritized retaining as many jobs as possible. Despite the challenges posed by tariffs and regulations, the company invested in upskilling programs, offering training to workers on the latest manufacturing techniques and technologies. By equipping employees with new skills, John Deere aimed to position its workforce for success in the evolving industry landscape. Additionally, John Deere made efforts to repatriate some of the jobs that had been moved to Mexico. While these efforts were limited by economic constraints, they sent a powerful message to workers and communities affected by the initial outsourcing decision. But even as John Deere worked to rebuild trust, the broader agricultural sector was grappling with the ripple effects of the crisis, highlighting systemic challenges that went far beyond one company. The agricultural industry in transition. The conflict between John Deere and the Trump administration exposed deeper issues within the agricultural industry. Farmers, manufacturers, and policymakers alike faced a reckoning as they confronted the challenges of globalization, climate change, and technological disruption. One of the most pressing issues was the growing divide between large agribusinesses and small family-run farms. While major corporations had the resources to weather economic turbulence, smaller operations struggled to adapt. The rising cost of machinery, combined with unpredictable commodity prices and shrinking profit margins, forced many small farms to close their doors. At the same time, advancements in agricultural technology created a divide between those who could afford to adopt new tools and those who couldn't. Farmers who embraced precision agriculture and automation often saw significant improvements in efficiency and profitability, while those without access to these technologies fell further behind. Policymakers debated how to address these disparities. Some advocated for increased subsidies and grants to support small farmers and encourage the adoption of sustainable practices. Others argued for regulatory reforms to reduce the burden on manufacturers and promote innovation. John Deere, as a leader in the industry, found itself at the center of these discussions. The company's decisions and innovations set a precedent for the broader market, influencing the direction of agricultural policy and practice. As the industry grappled with these challenges, John Deere's ability to navigate the complexities of the modern agricultural landscape became a litmus test for its resilience and leadership. The road to redemption. Despite the setbacks and controversies, John Deere remained determined to reclaim its status as a trusted partner for farmers and a cornerstone of American manufacturing. The company's leadership developed a multifaceted strategy to rebuild its brand and position itself for long-term success. One key component of this strategy was a renewed focus on sustainability. John Deere committed to reducing its carbon footprint across all aspects of its operations, from manufacturing to product design. The company introduced a series of green initiatives, including renewable energy investments, waste reduction programs, and partnerships with environmental organizations. In addition to its environmental efforts, John Deere prioritized community engagement. The company increased its support for local schools, vocational programs, and agricultural nonprofits, aiming to rebuild goodwill and demonstrate its commitment to the community communities it served. John Deere also expanded its global footprint, seeking new opportunities in emerging markets to offset domestic challenges. By establishing partnerships with international distributors and investing in localized production facilities, the company positioned itself to compete in a rapidly changing global economy. Internally, John Deere focused on fostering a culture of resilience and adaptability. Leadership emphasized the importance of transparency, accountability, and collaboration, encouraging employees at all levels to contribute to the company's recovery efforts. Finally, John Deere launched an aggressive marketing campaign to redefine its brand image. The campaign highlighted the company's innovations, its commitment to farmers, and its vision for a sustainable future. Testimonials from satisfied customers and employees reinforced the message, helping to rebuild confidence in the brand. But even as John Deere charted a path forward, the lessons of the crisis served as a reminder of the complexities and challenges of operating in a globalized world.